the traffic problem in action for CS50AIx. I'm going to go ahead and run this and explain some of what I investigated here. So I initially took a wrong turn and resized my arrays using the inbuilt NumPy resize function, which effectively clipped the images rather than resizing them. So once I finally figured out that the CV function was much more appropriate, I then did a little more additional pre-processing, including anti-aliasing the image when resizing it and normalizing the RGB pixels just by dividing by 255.0 so that they were all values between 0 and 1. I think this helped a little bit, but the main thing was to tweak the parameters of the model. So I started with the source code from the lecture and modified this, obviously making it suitable for RGB dimensions instead of just black and white, and playing around obviously with the output since there were a different number of categories. This produced pretty decent results right away, so 97%. Just wanted to get a baseline understanding of what some of the effective parameters are. Then I found an example of creating a CNN on the tensorflow.org website. And so I did a bit of compare and contrast between the two there, finding out that max pooling seems to be a better strategy than average pooling in a lot of cases, and just experimenting with the number of nodes in the dense hidden layers and that kind of thing. Then discovered a couple of just high-level descriptions of implementations of fairly well-known CNNs, LeNet5 and AlexNet. And so I thought I'd try these. LeNet5 was interesting because it helped me understand how far we've come. I think it was 2008. And so they were using activations that were sigmoid rather than ReLU. They were doing a lot of different things, a lot more average pooling rather than max pooling, and the result that the accuracy was considerably lower than either of the previous two. So then I had a look at the AlexNet implementation, and this is the one I adapted quite a bit to suit the dimensionality of the problem in the traffic problem. And here, basically, kind of going more in the spirit of the AlexNet, I didn't include quite as many convolutions and poolings, partly because the AlexNet, as described, started with a much larger image size. So I just used the model summary to try and keep the dimensionality the same as what I was seeing in AlexNet using a much larger image size. But again, ReLU activations, and here really started to learn more about padding and the importance of padding to preserve dimensionality between layers, because AlexNet, for example, does convolution without pooling, which I thought was very interesting. So played around with that, and in particular also learned that the size of the network in these hidden layers is somewhat dependent on the size of the input, the dimensionality of the input, and of course in here they were introducing dropout, and so I played around quite a bit with dropout, finding that no dropout actually produced worse results, so clear overfitting even within the context of this sample size, but that too much dropout was also a problem, particularly if the hidden networks were not of sufficient size themselves, which makes perfect sense. You're sort of over crippling, if you like, those networks. Lots more that I learned, about padding and strides and different pool sizes and filters, which I've summarized in the README. But I want to make sure I don't go over time. At the end of the day, I'm seeing between 98 and 99% accuracy with the strategy that I chose. Certainly not enough for me to feel confident jumping in a self-driving vehicle that would, for example, run a stop sign 2% of the time. But still a very useful exercise, learned a lot, and hopefully this is a sufficient summary of what I've learned.